our third wedding anniversary, and my CEO wife was at the airport, wrapped in the arms of the one that got away. He shot me a look of pure contempt. "So you're the replacement," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. She finally turned to me, her expression cold as ice. "Know your place." A silent explosion of joy went off in my head. Finally, we're at this part of the script. The money was practically in my account. I threw an arm around my stunned brother-in-law and flashed my brightest smile. "Come on, Ryan," I said. "I'm taking you to the best spa in the city to celebrate my new single status." My treat. My wife and her old flame just stood there frozen. The air in JFK's private terminal smelled of antiseptic and expensive perfume. Catherine Sterling, my wife in the legal sense of the word, stood before me in a crisp, white pantsuit. Behind her was him, tall, handsome in a tailored trench coat. Julian Vance, the man she'd been dreaming about for the past 3 years. Today was our third wedding anniversary. It was also the day my contract expired. Julian's eyes scanned me for a full 3 seconds, the way you'd appraise a piece of outdated furniture before calling Goodwill. He smirked, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the quiet hum of the terminal. "So you're the replacement." I didn't say anything. I just looked at Catherine. She wouldn't meet my gaze, her eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance, a silent confirmation. Then, her attention finally snapped to me, that perpetually neutral face now a mask of cold dismissal. "Know your place," she said. And just like that, the firework I called $50 million payout finally went off. Boom. It was here, the line I had waited 1,095 days to hear. According to the final clause of our prenuptial agreement, upon Julian Vance's return to the country, and upon Catherine actively instructing me to know my place, our marital contract would automatically enter the dissolution process. I, Leo Evans, would receive $50 million in cash and the deed to a penthouse downtown. They call it getting kicked to the curb. For me, it was more like getting kicked onto a pile of money. I had to physically restrain myself from laughing out loud, my chest tight with excitement. Beside me, Ryan, my brother-in-law, was gaping. He looked from his sister to me and back again, his mouth hanging open. He was probably expecting a scene, a pathetic, broken-hearted plea, or maybe a volcanic eruption of rage. I decided not to disappoint. I gave him a scene, but one from a script I wrote myself. I slung my arm over Ryan's shoulders. The kid was still in shock, stiff as a board. I grinned at him, a full-on, toothpaste commercial smile. "Come on, man," I said. "I'm taking you to the sanctuary for the full treatment. We're celebrating my return to freedom." Ryan's eyes nearly bugged out of his head. For the first time I could remember, a crack appeared in Catherine's icy composure. Shock. Julian's triumphant smirk froze on his face. The terminal was so quiet, I could hear the faint whir of the air conditioning vents. Without another glance at them, I steered my petrified brother-in-law toward the exit, whistling under my breath. Behind me, I could feel 2 sets of eyes burning holes in my back. It felt incredible. 3 years of swallowing my pride, of playing the part of the meek, placeholder husband. All of it was about to be converted into a beautiful 8-figure number in my bank account. Totally worth it. The sanctuary was the most exclusive private spa in the city, known for its hushed, tranquil atmosphere. I booked the largest suite for Ryan and me. It came with a private soaking pool, a tea lounge, and a surround sound system. Ryan had been in a complete daze the entire ride over, only snapping out of it when an attendant brought in a platter of fresh fruit and hot towels. He popped a grape into his mouth. "Leo, dude, are you okay?" he mumbled. "My sister." She was completely out of line. I sank my feet into the perfectly heated herbal bath and let out a long, satisfied sigh. "Am I okay?" "Ryan, I've never been better. But that's Julian Vance." He looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "She humiliated you in front of everyone for him." I waved a dismissive hand and picked up the remote, finding a playlist of classic audiobooks. Some things you'll understand when you're older, kid. For me, today is Independence Day. The rich, baritone voice of a famous actor began narrating The Great Gatsby through the hidden speakers. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice. Ryan stared at me, utterly baffled by my blissful expression. He scratched his head. "Are you sure you're okay? Like, maybe you're in shock. I could call a therapist." I tossed a cherry that landed perfectly in his open mouth. Don't call a shrink, call a masseuse. Full deep tissue. It's on me. Just then my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with her name, Catherine. Ryan sat bolt upright, instantly tense. I slowly dried my hands, hit answer, and put on speaker. Leo, where are you? Her voice was as cool as ever, but I could detect an undercurrent of suppressed anger. I cleared my throat and adopted a tone of pure innocence. I'm out celebrating. Celebrating? Her voice jumped half an octave. Yeah, celebrating our 3rd anniversary. And, my impending freedom. My voice was light, cheerful even. I could hear Ryan suck in a sharp breath next to me. Silence on the other end. A long 10-second pause. I could picture her perfectly, brow furrowed, tapping a manicured nail against her desk. Her tell when she was annoyed and thinking. What does that supposed to mean? She finally asked. Nothing, I said, picking up a cup of tea and blowing on it. It means exactly what it sounds like. Look, Ms. Sterling, if there's nothing else, I'm going to hang up. The audiobook is getting to the good part. And before she could reply, I hit the red button. The world went quiet again. Ryan looked at me like I'd just grown a second head. The grape fell from his fingers. Dude, you are my hero, he whispered. You actually hung up on my sister. I gave him a wink. As of today, she's not my boss anymore. Hanging up is the least I can do. For 3 years, I was on call 24/7. My phone was never on silent, never out of reach. Today was the first time I had ever ended a call with her. The feeling was even better than the foot bath. It was dark by the time Catherine got back to the penthouse she called home. Usually, no matter how late she came back, I would have left the light on for her in the living room. There would have been a warm soup waiting in a thermos on the kitchen counter. Tonight, the entire apartment was pitch black, silent. She fumbled for the light switch, blinking in the sudden glare. The place felt empty, yet it was unnervingly neat. My slippers were gone from the entryway. The book I'd been reading was no longer on the sofa. The faint, earthy smell from the succulents I kept on the balcony was gone. It was too clean, as sterile and impersonal as a showroom. A strange wave of irritation washed over Catherine. She walked into the living room. On the glass coffee table, a single document lay waiting. The divorce papers. My signature was already on it. The penmanship, like me, was clean and efficient, without a hint of hesitation. Next to the papers was a handwritten list. She picked it up. 3-year guide to Catherine Sterling's life, stomach issues. Avoid cold and spicy foods. I threw out the sriracha. There are ginger snaps in the pantry for late nights at the office. Mild insomnia. I changed the diffuser to a lavender blend. Refills are in the second drawer of the nightstand. You always forget to drink water when you get home. The filter for the pitcher was changed last week. There's always filtered water ready in the fridge. The jade bracelet your grandmother gave you has a hairline fracture. I had it professionally restored. It's in the top tray of your jewelry box. The succulent on the balcony. Spike hates being overwatered. Fatty loves the sun. I moved him to the west-facing window. Watering instructions are taped to the watering can. The list was long, covering 2 full pages in my tight script. It detailed everything from her daily habits to the maintenance of every object in a house, right down to birthday reminders and gift preferences for her parents and grandmother. Exhaustive, meticulous. Catherine's fingers began to tremble. She had never noticed any of this. She had always thought of me as a quiet, unobtrusive shadow, a placeholder she'd hired to keep her family off her back. She never realized that shadow had seeped into every single corner of her life. Her phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Julian. Catherine, you home? I start the company tomorrow. We should go out for a celebratory dinner. His voice was brimming with excitement. Catherine stared at the list in her hand. For the first time, she didn't immediately match his enthusiasm. We'll see, she said, and hung up. She sank into the cold leather of the sofa. This home, where she had lived for 3 years, suddenly felt like the most unfamiliar place in the world. The next morning at 10 o'clock, I got a text from my bank. A deposit of $50 million was made to your account ending in XXXX on October 26th at 10:03 a.m. Your new balance is $50,000,135.50. I stared at the zeros, counting them 3 times just to be sure. 7 of them. 50 million. My breath caught in my throat, and then a wave of pure, unadulterated euphoria washed over me. I lay back on the plush bed in my hotel suite, held the phone up to my face, and kissed the screen. I was free. I was a multi-millionaire. The first thing I did wasn't to buy a sports car or book a round-the-world trip. I made a phone call. Hi, is this Sarah from the brokerage? It's Leo Evans. Yes, that's right. The penthouse at the Apex Tower, the one overlooking the park? I'll take it. All cash. The Apex Tower was one of the most prestigious addresses in the city. It stood directly opposite Sterling Tower, the headquarters of Catherine's company. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new apartment, you could see straight into her corner office. 30 minutes later, the deal was done. I swiped my card without blinking. The second thing I did was call Ryan. Ryan, you up? Put on your most expensive clothes. I'm taking you out to a place with more stars than the planetarium. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice thick with sleep. 3 Michelin stars, my friend. That evening at Perigee, the city's most sought-after French restaurant, Ryan and I sat at a table by the window. On the table was a bottle of 82 Lafite. On our plates were mounds of caviar and perfectly seared foie gras. Ryan ate like he'd been starved for a week. Man, he said between bites, your sentence is finally up. Huh? But seriously, where did you get all this money? I swirled the deep red wine in my glass, a smirk playing on my lips. He thought I'd gotten a generous severance package. He had no idea just how generous. Meanwhile, a few hundred feet away, on the top floor of Sterling Tower, Catherine's assistant knocked on her office door. Ms. Sterling, there's something you should know. Catherine looked up from a mountain of paperwork, rubbing her temples. What is it? The assistant gestured toward the window at the gleaming Apex Tower across the street. Mr. Evans, he bought the penthouse there this morning, in cash, and I think he's having dinner at Perigee right now. Catherine followed her gaze. Against the night sky, the restaurant glittered like a jewel. She could just make out 2 figures at a window table. One was Leo, holding a wine glass. The other was her own brother, laughing. He didn't look like a man who'd been dumped. He looked carefree, happy, like a prisoner who just blasted his way out of jail. Catherine's expression hardened. Revenge spending, I assume, she said with a dismissive little laugh. Let him. I suppose that's all his pathetic ego can muster. She looked back down at her documents. But for some reason, the words on the page had turned to gibberish. Julian Vance started his new job as vice president of Sterling Industries. His first big pitch was a grand, ambitious plan for a metaverse social platform he called Project Elysium. At the board meeting, he used his charismatic voice to paint a beautiful picture of a future where the virtual and real worlds would merge. But a few of the old guard board members, men who had been with Catherine's father, weren't buying it. Mr. Vance, this is a very slick presentation. A board member named Mr. Davis said bluntly. But where's the business model? What's the monetization strategy? We're manufacturing, not science fiction. Julian's confident smile faltered. Catherine stepped in. Mr. Davis, times are changing, she said, her voice firm. We need to evolve. I'm approving this project. Initial investment of $50 million. Julian will have full oversight. She overruled everyone, giving Julian her unconditional support. After the meeting, Julian was beaming. Catherine, I won't let you down, he said. Don't worry about them. They're just dinosaurs. She nodded, not saying much. She just felt tired. In the past, for a meeting like this, Leo would have prepared a full dossier on every board member, anticipating their questions. He would have told her, Davis has an engineering background. You need to hit him with hard data. The guy from finance only cares about ROI, so lead with the 5-year projections. Now, there was nothing, just Julian's flippant dismissal of them as dinosaurs. The inconveniences in her personal life started piling up, too. In the morning, she wanted to pour over coffee, only to realize she had no idea how to operate the complicated machine Leo had bought. At lunch, her stress-induced stomach pains flared up. She tore through her office drawers and finally found a box of antacids Leo had stocked for her, hidden at the very bottom. At night, she came home to the same cold, silent darkness. She started to miss the man who would always greet her at the door with a glass of warm water and a simple, "You're home." She had thought it was just a mundane routine. Now she realized that routine had been carefully and thoughtfully maintained by someone else. Her insomnia got worse. The lavender oil in the diffuser ran out, and she searched the entire apartment but couldn't find the refills Leo had mentioned. She didn't know the brand, didn't know where he bought it. It dawned on her that she knew nothing about the home she had lived in for 3 years. The Sterling family dinner at the Greenwich estate was a mandatory event, once a month. It was tradition. This time, Catherine brought Julian, intending to formally introduce him to the family, especially her grandmother. The true power in the Sterling family wasn't Catherine. It was the matriarch, still sharp and formidable in her 80s. Everyone was seated as the staff served the first course. Grandma Sterling sat at the head of the table, her fingers tracing a string of pearls. Her eyes swept across the room and landed on the empty chair beside Ryan. "Where's Leo?" she asked, her voice calm. The table went silent. Catherine shifted uncomfortably. "Grandma, Leo, and we've separated." "Separated?" Her grandmother's eyes narrowed. "Why wasn't I informed?" "It's my personal life," Catherine said, a defensive edge to her tone. Her grandmother ignored her and turned to the butler. "Call Leo. Tell him he's late for dinner." The atmosphere became thick with tension. Julian, trying to salvage the moment, stood up with his wine glass. "Mrs. Sterling, my name is Julian Vance, a friend of Catherine's. It's an honor to meet you. To your health." The matriarch didn't even look at him. "I don't drink wine. Please sit down." Julian's smile froze on his face. Just then, the roar of a sports car echoed from the driveway. A flashy red Ferrari pulled up. The door opened, and I stepped out, dressed in casual designer clothes and carrying a gift box. I walked in as if I owned the place, completely ignoring Catherine and Julian. I went straight to the head of the table. "Grandma," I said, handing her the box. "I heard you've been getting into classic radio dramas. I tracked down a fully restored 1940s cathedral radio for you and a collector's set of The Shadow on vinyl." For the first time all evening, a genuine smile spread across the old woman's face. "You're a thoughtful boy, Leo," she said, patting my hand. She motioned for me to sit in the empty chair beside her. "Quick, sit. We were waiting for you to start." From start to finish, I didn't give Catherine or Julian a single glance. It was as if they were invisible. Catherine gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white. She didn't understand. How could a man she had discarded still hold such a place of honor in her family? How could her grandmother, of all people, value him so much? Dinner turned into a silent battlefield. Not wanting to be ignored, Julian launched into a monologue, jumping from international finance to the latest tech trends, trying to showcase his brilliance. "Grandma, the future is virtualization," he declared passionately. "If Sterling Industries doesn't pivot now, we'll be left behind." Without looking up from her plate, the matriarch placed a piece of asparagus in my bowl. "And will this virtualization feed our factory workers? Will it give them a raise?" Julian was speechless. He tried another angle. "I think the company's manufacturing division is weighing us down. We should divest and funnel that capital into high-yield tech ventures." Ryan, sitting across from me, rolled his eyes. "Easy for you to say. You want to sell off the legacy my grandfather built? What happens to the thousands of people who work in those factories? You go to support their families?" "Ryan, that's enough." Catherine snapped. Ryan jutted out his chin. "What? I'm talking to my brother-in-law here, Kath. Stay out of it." The brother-in-law he was referring to, of course, was me. I stayed out of the debate entirely, just quietly eating and occasionally telling Grandma Sterling a funny anecdote I'd heard on a history podcast, which made her laugh. We looked so comfortable, so natural, as if we were the real family. Catherine watched us, a storm of conflicting emotions brewing inside her. She realized that Julian's grand, abstract theories sounded hollow and weak next to the practical, people-focused concerns of her grandmother and brother. And me, the man she'd always looked down on, I fit in effortlessly. I knew her grandmother's tastes. I was on a first-name basis with Ryan, and even the family's notoriously picky chef would take my suggestions for the menu. It seemed like I was doing nothing, but I had done everything. When the tense meal finally ended, her grandmother looked at Catherine. "Catherine, my study. Now." And she turned to me. "Leo, wait for me a moment. My orchids are looking a bit sad. I need your advice." To Julian, she said nothing at all. His face was darker than the night sky. Julian's metaverse project imploded. The entire $50 million investment vanished without a trace. The top-tier international tech team he'd partnered with was exposed as a shell corporation. Once the money was transferred, it disappeared. The office was in an uproar. The old guard board members stormed into Catherine's office. "We told you this was a bad idea, Catherine. $50 million gone. Vance has to be held accountable for this." Catherine's head was spinning. She confronted Julian, demanding an explanation. He just played dumb. "Catherine, I don't know how this happened. I was deceived just like you. It was an execution error by my subordinates. I've already fired the project manager." He deflected all the blame without a second thought. Catherine looked at him and saw a complete stranger. She remembered a crisis the company had faced 3 years ago. Back then, I had stayed up with her for 3 days straight, analyzing spreadsheets, finding the flaw in the supply chain, and drafting the solution. Afterward, I gave her all the credit and went home to quietly make her a pot of chicken noodle soup for her ulcer. Compared to that, Julian seemed like a coward. Catherine had her own team investigate. The truth came out quickly. There was no deception from a third party. The vast majority of the $50 million had been funneled through a series of offshore accounts directly into Julian's personal coffers. He had been after the money from the very beginning. His grand return, the rekindling of their old flame, it was all an elaborate con. Catherine sat alone in her vast office, staring out at the city lights, a deep chill seeping into her bones. Her famed intellect, her sharp business acumen, it had all been a joke to him. She had thrown me away for this man. She had treasured a con artist and pushed away the only person who had ever truly taken care of her. Late that night, the familiar, sharp pain twisted in her stomach. Catherine curled into a ball on the sofa, a sheen of cold sweat on her forehead. She instinctively started to call out my name, Leo, but the word died in her throat. I was gone. She stumbled to the kitchen to get some water. She opened the pantry, but it was nearly bare. She had forgotten. I was the one who did all the shopping, who stocked the house. Without me, it was just an empty shell. Clutching the counter, she made her way to the medicine cabinet. After rummaging through it, she finally found the antacids. Tucked beneath the box was a small sticky note with my handwriting. Extra strength. Only take when the pain is bad and never on an empty stomach. Soup is better. Staring at those familiar words, Catherine's tears finally came, hot and fast. The composure she had maintained for weeks finally shattered. She grabbed her car keys and ran out of the apartment. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove. Without thinking, she found herself parked outside the Apex Tower. She looked up, craning her neck to see the top floor of the skyscraper. The lights were on. She could see figures moving around on the balcony. It looked like a party. She recognized one of them immediately. It was me. I was in a simple t-shirt, holding a beer, laughing with a group of friends. Next to me stood a tall, beautiful woman, smiling up at me. The faint sound of music and laughter drifted down from above. Catherine sat alone in her cold, dark car, looking up at the warmth and joy of my new life, and then back at her own desolate solitude. A tidal wave of regret, so immense it felt like it could drown her, crashed down. She finally understood exactly what she had lost. The next day, Catherine came to my new apartment. Ryan answered the door. He froze when he saw her, then blocked the entrance. "What are you doing here?" "I need to see Leo," she said, her voice hoarse. "My man Leo doesn't want to see you," Ryan said, not budging. "Ryan, please. Let me in." Her voice was softer, more vulnerable than I had ever heard it. From inside, my voice floated out, lazy and indifferent. "It's fine, Ree. Let her in." Ryan stepped aside with a scowl. The apartment was spacious, decorated in the minimalist style I preferred, but it felt lived in and warm. I was on the sofa, playing a video game on a massive screen, and didn't even turn around. "Ms. Sterling, to what do I owe the pleasure?" My tone was polite but distant. She sat on the armchair opposite me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Leo, can we talk?" "About what?" I paused the game and finally turned to look at her. "Is the settlement not enough?" "I think it was perfectly fair, but if you want to add a few more zeros, I won't object." Every word was a carefully aimed dart. "I'm not here about the money." She took a deep breath. "I was wrong. About Julian. I made a terrible mistake." "Okay," was all I said. Flat. Uninterested. So, I prompted. You came all the way here just to tell me your judgment is flawed. She was at a loss for words. She must have thought that if she came here and admitted she was wrong, I would give her something, anything. But I didn't. I just watched her, a spectator at her one-woman show. Is there any chance for us? She finally forced the words out, her voice trembling. I laughed. I stood up and walked over to the massive window, looking down at the glittering tower that housed her empire. Ms. Sterling, I think you have us confused with a different story. 3 years ago, we entered into a business contract. That contract is now terminated. There was never an us to begin with. Don't you have any feelings for me at all? I turned back to face her, my expression serious for the first time. I do, I said. A flicker of hope lit up her eyes. My feelings for you were that of an employee for his boss. You paid me on time, and I did my job well. Now the contract is over. I've received a very generous severance package, and I am filled with gratitude. Thank you for your business. Each word was delivered with a pleasant smile, but they cut deeper than any insult. Just then, her phone rang. Julian. She ignored it. It rang again. Finally, a text came through. Catherine, you can't do this to me. You told me you'd wait for me. I gave up everything overseas for you, and now you're going to send me to prison over a replacement. He was getting desperate. Catherine looked at the text, the irony almost comical. Catherine did not go easy on him. She compiled every piece of evidence detailing Julian's embezzlement and turned it all over to the authorities. The ruthless CEO was brutally efficient when it came to cleaning up a mess. Julian was arrested, and his case moved quickly. Thanks to her swift crisis management, Sterling Industries stock, after a brief dip, stabilized. When it was all over, Catherine was exhausted. She went to the estate to see her grandmother. The old woman was in her study, practicing calligraphy, the air thick with the scent of sandalwood. Grandma, I was wrong, Catherine said, standing before the large oak desk. Her grandmother set down her brush. Wrong about what? About Julian, and about pushing Leo away. The matriarch sighed and pulled a file from her drawer, sliding it across the desk. It was a copy of the prenuptial agreement I had signed 3 years ago, but attached to the back was an addendum, a page she had never seen before. Addendum. This agreement is contracted at the behest of Mrs. Eleanor Sterling, Catherine's grandmother. Mr. Leo Evans is required, for the duration of the 3-year marital term, to fulfill the responsibilities of a husband, including managing the household and the personal well-being of Ms. Catherine Sterling and assisting with certain family affairs. His primary objective is to act as a mirror, allowing Ms. Sterling to see the people around her more clearly and to learn the art of judging character. Upon completion of the 3-year term, regardless of the outcome, Mr. Evans will receive the compensation stipulated herein. Catherine's eyes widened in disbelief. This was a test, her grandmother said calmly. For both of you. I always knew you were brilliant, my dear, but in matters of the heart, you were naive. I saw Julian for what he was years ago, but that was a lesson you had to learn for yourself. Leo was the whetstone I chose to sharpen you. He comes from a good family. He's decent, hardworking, a good man. I just didn't expect that once the blade was sharp, you'd throw the stone away. Catherine's hands shook as she held the document. It had all been part of her grandmother's plan. I wasn't just a replacement. I was an agent hired for a mission to help her grow up. But why had I never said a word? For 3 years, I had just silently played the part of the man she ignored and belittled. I never once let the mask slip. Catherine took over the company's mess and cleaned it up. Then she started trying to clean up her own. She learned to cook. She figured out how to use the coffee machine. She downloaded an app to remind her how to care for the succulents on the balcony. She made the penthouse look just like it did when I lived there. Then, she began to pursue me. It was awkward, clumsy. She would show up outside my building in the morning with coffee and pastries, texting me that they were with the doorman before driving away. She researched the history podcasts I liked and had rare books on the topic sent to my office. She would wait for hours in her car across from my building just to catch me for a 30-second conversation on the sidewalk. My response was always the same, polite, distant, and final. Ms. Sterling, thank you for the coffee, but I prefer to make my own. Ms. Sterling, the books have arrived. It was a generous gesture. Ms. Sterling, you don't have to wait for me. I'm very busy. Finally, she learned from Ryan that I had booked a one-way ticket to Europe, the first stop on a round-the-world trip. Catherine raced to the airport like a woman possessed. She found me at the same private terminal. I was just about to go through security. "Leo," she yelled, her voice cracking. I stopped and turned around. She ran to me, her hair a mess, her makeup smudged. The powerful CEO was gone, replaced by a desperate, frantic woman. Her eyes were red. "I was wrong," she pleaded. "Don't go. Please." I just looked at her for a long moment. Then I smiled, a gentle smile with no malice or triumph in it. It was just peaceful. I took out my phone, pulled up a photo, and showed it to her. It was a picture of me and a beautiful woman laughing under the Eiffel Tower at night. Her arm was linked through mine, her head resting on my shoulder. "Catherine," I said, my voice soft, "I'd like you to meet my new travel partner." The color drained from her face. She stood there, frozen, as I gave her a small wave, turned, and disappeared through the security gate. The world, for her, went silent. On the plane, cruising at 30,000 feet, the woman from the photo took off her eye mask. She stretched and grinned at me. "So, how was my performance, cousin?" The look on her face was priceless. I put my phone away and rubbed my temples. "You were great, Chloe. Just make sure you send me the invoice for your acting services. Ryan's paying." The woman was a drama student, a friend of Ryan's I'd roped into my plan. Just then, my phone vibrated with a text. It was from Ryan. "Leo, code red. She bought a ticket for the next flight to Paris. She's coming after you. Good luck, man. Don't get caught." I stared at the message, then switched off my phone with a heavy sigh. Looks like my trip around the world was going to be anything but peaceful. End.